You're listening to Physician Non-Clinical Careers, episode number 322. Best first resources to use before you start your non-clinical journey. For the past 2 months, I've been posting 30-minute responses to questions for my NewScript members. Now, if you're not a NewScript member, you may recall that Dr. Tom Davis and I created NewScript 2 years ago as a place for clinicians who are disillusioned and disappointed by the current healthcare working conditions to get together to support one another, learn from each other, and access all kinds of resources to help them. We've recorded audio and video lessons, live events, and access to a dozen mentors with expertise in non-clinical and non-traditional careers. And I thought that the material in recent session would be very helpful to many of you, especially if you're a new listener. So that will run in just a few minutes. But first, let's acknowledge our show sponsor. I've met many physicians who tell me that completing their MBA was critical to their career pivot. And the Physician Executive MBA program from the University of Tennessee is the one that most of them have chosen. The UT Pemba is the longest running and most highly respected physician-only MBA in the country. In fact, it's produced more than 700 graduates. The Haslam College of Business at the UT was recently ranked number 1 in the world by Economist magazine as the most relevant executive MBA program. And like most other programs, it only takes 1 year to complete. And during the program, you'll do a company project, and that'll really demonstrate the benefits of the MBA to your coworkers and to your employer. Graduates have taken leadership positions in major healthcare organizations and have become entrepreneurs and business owners. So if you want to acquire new business and management skills and advance your non-clinical career, then contact Dr. Kate Ashley's office at 865-974-6526 or use our handy link at nonclinicalphysicians.com/physician MBA. Okay, non-clinical nation, if you're early in your career journey and maybe even haven't made a commitment yet to making a change, you might be looking for the answer to the following question. What are the best first resources to find and use as you consider a non-clinical or non-traditional career? We have to get started somewhere. And I'm going to present today my answer to that question with a focus on the low cost and easily obtained resources that will set the stage for you to effectively launch your career journey if that's what you decide to do. All right, let's get to it. It's a little bit after the top of the hour, and so I am going to get started. I'm not expecting a lot of attendees today, so anyone that joins us, please feel free to type a question in the chat. And in the meantime, I'm going to cover a topic. I am recording this session so that others can watch it later at their leisure. So this is the fourth session. I'm trying to be real consistent and do these every week at the same time. And I was thinking about what I would talk about today if we didn't have a lot of questions. In the future, I'll try to come prepared with questions from those that are being sent by email or posted in NewScript. Otherwise, we can take questions during the session. But today, what I want to talk about is just an overview of some of the basic resources for clinicians who are looking to change careers. So I'm going to focus on careers today. In NewScript, of course, we talk about a lot of different things from, burnout to self-limiting beliefs to starting a small business to finding something else to do part-time. Today, I'm just going to look at some resources that are focused mainly for physicians and that are applicable to those early in the process of career change. So I'm going back a few years because I've done some podcasts and I've written some blog posts on some of these issues. And the resources that I generally talk about are books and maybe courses. I don't think I'm going to touch on any courses today. Mostly low cost resources, podcasts that have been out there for a while, and other resources that I've come across. So I'm just going to get started with the books. Now, oddly enough, the first resource I'm going to talk about is not really geared to specifically clinicians or even physicians, but it's a book called Pivot. The only move that matters is your next one. It's a book by Jenny Blake. It's been out a few years. She might even have a second edition out. I'm not sure. I don't think so. But I found that the model that she walks through for finding and pursuing your first major job when you've been, let's say, in a profession for a while, it's a really good model. It addresses some of the mindset issues. It talks about how to plant yourself first and do an assessment of things like your interests, your passions, and also something that you're good at, which in our case, most of the members in New Script are good at very, very many things. But I do recommend that. And by the way, I'm going to go through a lot of these resources today, and I'm not going to type these in the chat as we go. But what I'll do is I'll put everything that I mentioned today just on a one-page resource, and I'll send it basically to everybody. I'll just go into New Script and I'll do a post out to everybody, and attached with that post will be this list of resources that I talk about today. So I like that book. Most of the books I'm going to talk about, I have copies of here to show you. And the video that we're doing today will, of course, be recorded, and there'll be a replay so you can look at the video. But I don't have all the books to show you because some of them I have an only electronic version of it. So that's the first one I want to mention. The second one is another one that's been out a long time. And again, I can show you this one. I think it was the first one that I ever purchased and read, by Michael McLaughlin. It's called "Do You Feel Like You Wasted All That Training? Questions from Doctors Considering a Career Change." So it's actually written in the format of questions and answers. I mean, it's literally about 150 pages of questions and answers. Everything from, you know, the results of, considering a career change, the emotional and the feelings that kind of can engender in you, and then where to look for options and so forth. It's a little bit dated, but again, I'll put that in the list, but it's a good one. And Michael McLaughlin, if you look up the name of the authors on these, you'll find these books. So for the first one, if you look up Jenny Blake, you'll be able to find her book. They're all on Amazon. If you look up Michael McLaughlin, you'll find his book. And so that's a good one. That's a Q&A, and that's a general one for physicians. So that's why it's really good. It addresses like not doing a specific career. He has a LinkedIn group, I believe. I think it's called PNR. Anyway, if you look up in LinkedIn non-clinical careers, you'll come up with his LinkedIn group, and it's been there for a while. And there's a little bit of activity there. Then another one that's been around a long time, and it's also a little different in the sense that it's a little more of an academic approach, but with specific jobs, and they're kind of split up in a more, like a university would kind of look at career transition for physicians and other clinicians. And it's called Physicians' Pathways to Non-Traditional Careers and Leadership Opportunities. I think this one is a little less practical. Get it out of the light there. But it's still useful, and it can give you some good ideas. Sorry if I blocked my sound there. I will put that on the list. Now, the other one that I don't have a physical copy of, but I've read it online. I think it's it's like an Amazon version of the book called Careers Beyond Clinical Medicine, and it's by Heidi Moad. So if you look up Heidi Moad, MOA, WAD. She's the one that went from clinical to a non-clinical job, over a decade ago, maybe 2 decades. And she was a neurologist. Well, she is a neurologist. And she went into she's one of the early people I talked to about going into a utilization management or case management type position. And so again, if you look up her name, you'll find that she talks about specific careers. She did a lot of personal research. The book I mentioned before, the more academic one, actually has multiple authors because each chapter is by somebody different. But in Heidi Moad's, again, she's kind of seen as an icon. She also has a website called Nonclinical Doctors, I think. But if you look up Heidi Moad on Amazon, you'll find her book, and it has some really good insights and a list of types of careers, which you can also find on her website. And then kind of the more recent one that I consider kind of the Bible of non-clinical careers now is the one by Sylvie Stacy. Here it is. 50 non-clinical careers for physicians. This is about as complete as you're going to get, that has a list of the most common non-clinical careers. And she covers some areas that many of us don't touch on very often, like jobs in government. There's a whole section on jobs in government and a section on public health, which includes the CDC level and NIH and other government jobs, and then the state public health, and then the local county public health, and everything in between. But she has it broken down by, insurance companies, hospitals and health systems, consulting jobs, medical writing, marketing and advertising. She even addresses, I think, some of the, radio personalities, TV personalities. So everything is sort of described in there. Some estimates of what the income would be, which are probably not that accurate just because, even within a year or two, these things get dated. But it's definitely one that you would, if you're looking for a simple, low cost resource, and that you don't have to read the whole book. You just look in those sections that are pertinent. And the thing about this is it was published by the American Association for Physician Leadership. So you can get it there, or you can get it, I think you can get it on Amazon as well. And Sylvie Stacy used to run the Look for Zebras website, which she has since sold. But that had a lot of the same information, which has now been compiled into this book, which was published at least 3 or 4 years ago now. I usually promote or mention a couple of other books of friends of mine, colleagues who are actually both podcasters as well and are well known in the non-clinical career arena. One is called The Positioned Physician. I guess I have a copy, but I don't have it handy. It's by Michael A. Wu Ming. Mike Wu Ming, you might better know him better as, again, a podcaster. And if you look up The Positioned Physician, you'll see that he has a second edition out. And it's really more about setting up either a cash-only medical company or clinic, and also starting a consulting or coaching business. And it goes through there, and it talks about some of the practical things from the standpoint of business, but also some of the, the mental hoops to jump through before you do something like that. And as I said, he updated it just a couple of years ago. So the newest edition is out, and it's not expensive. The other one is by Dr. Andrew Wilner, called The Locum Life. And it's specifically for those who are looking to go into locums, locum tenens work as an alternative to typical clinical work. Now, obviously, it is clinical, just as Mike Wu Ming's book talks about, opening like a aesthetic or weight loss clinic. That's also clinical, but obviously they're clinical in a way that basically avoids the issue of dealing with an office, dealing with billing, dealing with working for a large corporate structure. As a locums doctor, you technically may often do that, but you're kind of at arm's length. You don't get involved in the politics. You usually get paid more because they're struggling to fill those slots, and it's usually obviously a temporary position. So that's another book that I would recommend. Um, Now, the other thing I want to talk about is some other resources that are not books. Here are some of the podcasts that I would recommend you consider besides watching or listening to my podcast, Physician Non-Clinical Careers. Um, Docs Outside the Box is interesting. It's not always about careers, but there's a lot about careers in there. And it started, good 6 or 7 years ago. So there are a lot of episodes where he is interviewing people doing interesting things with their careers. The other would be the Career RX with Marjorie Stiegler. That is a really good one. A lot of advice and a lot about pharma because that's the industry that Marjorie is now working in. She is an anesthesiologist, but she's now working mostly in pharma and then producing the podcast. And she has several courses, which can be of benefit as well. You've got, I guess the other one I would mention is Entree MD by Neka Unachukwu. She's been on my podcast 2 or 3 times. She has maybe morphed things, but if you look up Dr. Una, you'll find everything that she does. And she has some courses, and she focuses more on um, enhancing your income of your practice, improving your practice, and then also non-clinical, non-practice based businesses and so forth. So she's really dedicated to helping physicians and other clinicians thrive and overcome burnout by just doing something that they love. And then I would also mention the podcast Bootstrap MD, which is Mike Wu Ming's podcast. Sometimes when I'm talking about this topic, I'll mention coaches. There are a lot of coaches out there now, a lot of physician coaches that who coach physicians. It's very popular, but it's in high demand as well. And I think that the coaches that I know the best are really either full or not really doing one-on-one coaching anymore because they just have converted to doing group coaching and courses and things because it's an easier way to leverage that, instead of going one by one. But there are many individual physician coaches, and there is a company or an online resource run by Mike Wu Ming called physiciancoaches.com, which has, I think, about 300 or 400 physician coaches in there doing different types of coaching. So if you want to look somewhere where you can go through and see what type of coaching they do, what their background is, what their experience is, there's, for most of the coaches, there's that kind of information. So I would suggest that. There are Facebook groups, of course, that are dedicated to this. And there's actually probably a lot more now than what I'm fully aware of, but I know that Laura McCain's group, Physician Non-Clinical Career Hunters, PNC Hunters, Physician Non-Clinical Career Hunters. I used to be an admin for her for that group until a couple of years ago. I know that it has over 20,000 members. It's fairly active, which is nice because in the smaller groups, sometimes there aren't any posts for quite a while. So between herself and the people in there, they're always asking questions. And then there's a lot of coaches that will jump into that. So if you're not in Physician Non-Clinical Career Hunters Facebook group, I suggest you consider joining it. You can always go to Facebook and use some kind of a pseudonym. You don't have to put in information that will expose your identity to at least the members that are in the group. Now at the Facebook level, you might have to put information in there, so that they'll have it, but at least it won't be out to the public. There are many people in that group that have strange kind of pseudonyms. So that's one way to get around that issue, but there's a lot of information there. And Laura also posts things in there as files that you can access. Nisha Mehta has Physician Side Gigs, which has been around a long time. And I can't even, it's probably got close to 100,000 members. It's a very diverse group. And I think it seems to be more dedicated to women, but either way, it doesn't really matter. There's all that information there, so you can check that out. There's another group called Alternative Careers for Doctors. There's one by Jonathan Vitale called Remote Careers for Physicians. So, as its name implies, he and his members, which I don't know, I think it's well over 10,000 members now, talk about mostly, well, remote careers, but that could be a lot of things. I think the vast majority in that group are dedicated to utilization management type insurance jobs, for insurance companies, payers of various sorts. But it's a good one is pretty active, and a lot of ideas come out of that. Let's see what else as far as resources. Starla Fitch has a website, and she talks a lot about non-clinical careers. There's a lot of resources on Heather Fork's website, Doctors Crossing. A lot of freebies that are very useful. Lists of, let's say, companies and other things like that, which I often refer people to. So I think that's it as far as the basics. So you got your podcast, you've got your books, you've got your websites of the coaches that I mentioned today. And those are the main basic resources for those that are just getting started that need something to kind of get them going. Of course, when you're in NewScript, you can post a question about anything and somebody will generally answer. And so I guess that's all I wanted to talk about today. Remember that when I have these sessions, if you send me an email ahead of time with a question to john.jurica.md@gmail.com, that's really the most active business email that I have. Then I will bring those here and we'll address them as a group. And let's see now, if anybody else has a question today, just put that in there and I'll see what I can do to address it. Otherwise, I'll be back here next week at the same time, and we'll go from there. All right. I see there's a question here about Seek. It's very apropos, very timely. And I think the others who listen to the replay may benefit from that. In fact, it was funny because I had interviewed Dr. Savi Chadha, who's an MSL, and his interview is going to be posted this coming Tuesday. And he mentioned at some point in that interview that he was a faculty for Seek, and basically he serves as a mentor at Seek. So Seek is an organization that is actually dedicated to teaching mostly physicians about non-clinical careers. And it kind of dates back to the very early days, when way before I started my podcast. And in fact, I used the Seek meeting, one of the Seek meetings, as a way to identify guests for the podcast, because what Seek does is they produce online, and it used to be on CDs and tapes, booklets and so forth, but they produce these courses for people, for physicians in particular, who are looking to switch to a non-clinical job. And it kind of, I don't know the backstory completely, but it's run by 2 or 3 partners, father and son, and another partner, who they're all attorneys. And I think they got into it because they were getting involved in teaching physicians how to become expert witnesses, which was like a really awesome part-time job. Most people that are expert witnesses, of course, don't quit practice because usually they can't work as expert witnesses after that. There's a few exceptions to that. But anyway, so then they started doing courses on becoming an expert witness, and some of those are really awesome. They also created a large directory of expert witnesses that you can pay to be in, and they will send you business because other attorneys buy that manual. But one of the major parts of their whole enterprise is this annual Seek meeting, which is every October in the Chicago area. It's for people that know Chicago. It's like in Rosemont at one of the big conference centers. It's not downtown Chicago, but it's actually relatively close to O'Hare Airport for those that fly in. But I live close enough that I can drive to it. So anyway, the way it's structured is, I think the main part is 2 days. and you have like a big plenary session at the beginning. Everybody's in the room. There's some big name, so to speak, who speaks on a topic about, looking for new non-clinical career. I went there as a participant, not as a mentor or a presenter, but I've been there twice as a participant, mainly to meet the people that were doing the presentations. And the presentations are very good. They're like 40 minutes each, 40 minutes to an hour. And, you have back-to-back lectures going on. I actually have, if you've probably gotten the same, flyer that I have. And I think they do one session at a time, so you don't have to choose. There might be some concurrent sessions going on, but while they're doing the sessions, and this, like I said, is over 2 days, so they'll cover a good 20 topics more or less in pretty good detail. So you'll have some talking about how to go into consulting, how to become a physician advisor for an insurance company or a medical director, how to do expert witness work. What kind of jobs are there in pharma, and so on and so forth. So it's actually a good resource, and you get a booklet with the slides from everybody. And usually each person is going to give you some resources like where to find the job. So it's not necessarily for someone who has a particular job in mind, because you'll probably only have 1 or 2 hours devoted to that. Let's say you want to go into pharma. But if you're still at the beginning and you're really trying to sort through what your options might be, and they'll oftentimes get into the salaries, and they'll get into, how would you apply for this job? How would you prepare for the job, and so forth. So it's a really good intro. And it is going to be held in October, and it's kind of expensive. It's all relative. You get a lot of information. I think it's under $2,000, but it's somewhere in that, $1,500 range. I shouldn't misspeak, because I hate to have you not go if, it's really less expensive than what I'm saying. But let me see here. Yeah, I just go online and look up Seek, SEAK. You can look up the annual conference. Now, this says this is the 18th annual conference, so they've been doing it a long time. But if you go online, you'll see what the fee is, and it might be worth it. You come away with a lot of information. And the other thing that I should mention before I let you go is that during the conference, they have mentors. There's at least 40 mentors. So that means people like Laura McCain, and I don't know if Heather Fork still does it, but she used to do it, and Michelle Mudge Riley used to do it, and Tom Davis, my partner in NewScript, he used to do it. I don't think he's going this year. So there's a lot of pretty big names, people that have written books. Some of the books I've mentioned, I think Heidi maybe has been there before, and others that have put out these things. And like I said, that's where I went to get some guests. So there's a lot of information. So you get to sign up to sit down with each of these mentors for 15 minutes. It's really quick. And, you're trying to squeeze these things in with the other, let's say, 100 or so participants or attendees. You're going to the live ones. During breaks, you're all trying to get into the mentors, and so sometimes you have to skip 1 or 2 of the lectures if you want, or maybe skip all of them on a given day, so you can sit down with each of the different mentors, pick their brains about the jobs that they do or what they're talking about. And so, yeah, I don't get any kind of compensation for promoting it. I tend not to promote it actively very much anymore. But it's there, and it's the only one like it that I'm aware of. Now here at NewScript, of course, we did a summit last April, and we're probably going to do this again next April, which is an online kind of a version of that, but it doesn't have the mentorship, which is really a big piece of that conference. So it almost be worth it being able to, commiserate with 40 or 50 mentors while you're there. And in addition, pick out a few of the lectures that are done. So I hope that's helpful. If you have any questions about that, you can contact me in NewScript or send me an email. And good luck with everything. And I will see you all back here, whoever comes next week. And I'll put the replay out on NewScript soon. I'm kind of behind with the previous one, and this one I think I'll be okay on. But they'll get out there, and then I'm also going to send out the list of resources I mentioned today as just a one-page sheet with the links and so forth. So, all right, everybody, I will see you next time. I hope you found that presentation helpful. If you have any follow-up questions, just send those to me at john.chirica.md@gmail.com. I'll answer them personally via email and possibly use them as an inspiration for a future podcast episode. Also, if you'd like to participate live on a weekly basis in the Q&A sessions, you can learn more and join NewScript for a low monthly fee by going to newscript.app. That's NEWSCRIPT, newscript.app, A-P-P. Now you can find the link of all the resources that I mentioned in today's show and the transcript at nonclinicalphysicians.com/best first resources. Remember that this podcast is made possible by the support of the University of Tennessee Physician Executive MBA program. We call that the PEMBA, Physician Executive MBA program. And you can learn more about that at nonclinicalphysicians.com/physician MBA. I want to remind you that the opinions expressed here are mine today. And while the information provided on the podcast is true and accurate to the best of my knowledge, there's no guarantee that using the methods discussed here will lead to success in your career, life, or business. So you should always consult an attorney, an accountant, or a career strategist before making any major decisions about your career. So with that, I hope to see you here next Tuesday for another episode of Physician Non-Clinical Careers. Bye now.